from Community Power. He's going to basically be the facilitator for tonight's event. And with that, turn it over to him.
Sure. So hello, thank you guys for coming out to this public hearing. This is the first of two public hearings on Newmarket Community Power's electric aggregation plan. These are an opportunity that's made possible under New Hampshire RSA 53E relative to the aggregation of electric customers by municipalities and counties. And I'll talk through the presentation. We're here with the Newmarket Energy and Environment Advisory Committee, who has drafted a plan for Newmarket Community Power. This has been presented in a work session at the Town Council. There's a statutory requirement that there be two public hearings before Town Council acts to adopt this kind of a plan. And we'll get into some of the details, but really this is about creating opportunities for residents and businesses to have greater choice in electricity options, to have lower electricity supply rates, and to expand renewable energy offerings for communities and individuals who are interested in them. And this is really about creating an economy of scale with your collective community to achieve those goals. So we'll go through what is community power. We'll go through the draft electric aggregation plan. We'll talk about Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. I'm here on their behalf. This is a new nonprofit that has formed in the state. 30 plus cities, towns, and counties have come together to create this nonprofit power agency to be an alternative electricity supplier for their communities, as opposed to the default supply that comes through Eversource or other utility companies. And we'll get into this, but this is not about the grid, the electric grid and the delivery of electricity. That will remain with Eversource. This is just about the source of the power and giving communities more flexibility in choosing how they source their power that is then delivered by Eversource. We'll talk about the timeline and we can have a Q&A. So some of the key points, just at a high level: community power programs pool or aggregate the demand of customers in the community and allow them to purchase power at wholesale with the goals of lowering costs, expanding access to renewable energy, and other innovations. I mentioned the RSA, which is listed there, and it was first enacted in 1996 and then had some updates that made it really a beneficial thing for communities in 2019 and in 2021, and has been received strong bipartisan support. Democrats, Republicans, Governor Sununu have really worked together to make this possible for the state. And just sort of one snippet from the legislature's intent in that RSA to encourage voluntary, cost-effective, and innovative solutions to local needs with careful consideration for local conditions and opportunities. So this is about allowing cities and towns really to have their own say in how do they want to pursue their own energy goals, pursue innovation, pursue lower costs, and participate in the marketplace for electricity. So how does community power work? Sort of three pieces to the puzzle. There's the source on the left. And that's where Newmarket Community Power will buy electricity on behalf of the Newmarket residents and businesses from sources that they choose. In the middle, the delivery of that electricity will remain with Eversource. They will continue to be compensated for that. They will own and operate the grid. Nothing remains unchanged there. They will bill the customer. And they're really a partner, and their role is unchanged. And then on the community side, Newmarket Energy customers can save money. They can choose new power rates and options. They could choose 100% renewable energy if they want. And then over time, these programs can really evolve to expand opportunities for things like rooftop solar, battery storage.
Can I say something?
Please.
So really, Newmarket does not actually buy the electricity. They don't go into the contracts. Okay, there's a overriding entity, Community Power Coalition. They're the ones that Henry works for. They're the ones that actually go out and negotiate the deals to get electricity, and they make that available to Newmarket Community Power.
That's right. It's a good point. So part of the purpose of creating this coalition, this nonprofit that Newmarket sits on the board of and other communities sit on the board of, it's controlled by the communities, is so the town of Newmarket doesn't have to hire an expert in wholesale energy markets and procurement and contract negotiation for those kinds of things. That is centralized in this new nonprofit, and then available to the 30+ cities, towns, and counties that have joined it. So we share those services, eliminate redundancy, and it's all subject to right to know, and it's a public agency with public meetings and all of that. But yeah, each town doesn't have to become its own power market expert because that expertise is shared across the coalition. Just some of the benefits I mentioned: local control, lower costs. I'll get to a slide where the coalition just published its rates for this spring for 10 cities and towns, including Exeter and Rye. And there's considerable savings relative to the Eversource rates and the Unitil rates, so we'll get into that. And then over time, buying renewable energy, but some of the more mature markets are really developing local community scale renewable energy projects that are cost effective and helping to lower costs for their community. Just a clause from the actual plan. It states that Newmarket Community Power will only launch if it is able to initially offer residential default rates that are lower than or competitive with those offered by Eversource, and that provide a renewable energy content that is equal to or higher than Eversource. And we'll just double check this with the most recent version of the plan, because I'm trying to recall if there was an adjustment to the renewable energy portion of it.
We rehashed the sentence many times
We did.
to try to get it just right, and I don't remember if this was the latest iteration or not.
What I know is in there is that the program will only launch if it is able to initially offer residential default rates that are lower than or competitive with those offered by Eversource. And again, we'll see the rates in a couple of slides. But the point is, program can't launch unless it beats the Eversource rate.
There was another piece to it that also too that says, and the Newmarket Town Council determines that it's in the best interest of the community.
Yes, and so it's both. It's not either or. So the rates have to be competitive, and the town council has to be in support.
Right. So this is a good, important point. So we're going to have 2 public hearings, and then this will be brought to the town council. And if the town council votes to adopt this plan, they're still not committed to launching the program. They just are giving themselves the authority to contract with a service provider and see, okay, does the rate look good? Can we save customers money? Then we'll go. But it's not a commitment to actually take any action by adopting the plan. So just what does this look like for customers? This is a typical Eversource bill, and on the blue, that shows your energy supply, which is the portion we're talking about, and on the green, that shows the delivery. That's the Eversource poles and wires, the distribution system, and then the high voltage interstate transmission system. So green stays the same. Blue, right now, any customer can go into the market and shop for their own energy supply, and that's what Newmarket Community Power will do. We'll shop for energy supply and achieve an economy of scale in doing that. And on the second page of the bill, they sort of break down on the top the supplier and the delivery on the bottom. And again, we're only talking about the supplier portion. And the only thing that really changes from the customer perspective is it will say Community Power or Newmarket Community Power as your supplier if and when this launches some point in 2024. And they'll have the new Community Power supply rate, which is lower than the Eversource rate. So I mentioned some of these. Eversource continues to deliver power. We just talked about this, but the town council, if they adopt this plan, will be authorized to contract for services to launch the program, but they're not required to do so. And participation is always voluntary, so any individual customer can choose not to participate at any point in time and go shop with Eversource or with another provider if they'd like. So this will just provide a little bit of an outline of what's actually in the plan, and that document, I don't know if it is posted on the website as of yet.
It is not.
But it will be shortly posted on the website. So in 2020, the group's been working on this for some time. The town council designated Newmarket's Energy and Environment Advisory Committee as the electric aggregation committee. This is a provision of the law where each town has to have a committee develop a plan, and then task that committee with developing the plan, which they've done great work on over the past year or so, and that's what we're presenting to you today. So that will be made available on the website. And again, this is the first of 2 public hearings, with the second being on April 12th at 7 p.m. up in Town Council chambers. The program sets forward the goals, the plan sets forward the goals, defines the authority of the Town Council, how the program would be implemented. There's certain legal requirements like you have to provide universal access to customers. You have to treat same, like all residential customers fairly and equally. For example, you have to meet certain minimum environmental requirements. There are state policies that require a minimum amount of renewable energy. So that's detailed in the plan. It details how things like net metering customers who have solar panels on their rooftop will be handled, customers who are income qualified for the electric assistance program and discount rates, how they will maintain their discounts. And it does not commit the town to action, and it does not impose any financial commitment or liability to taxpayers. So these programs are funded completely separately from taxpayer general funds. They have no impact on the tax base. This is just showing the chapters. There's an introduction, there's an overview of Newmarket Community Power, there's discussion of Community Power Coalition, which we'll get to in the slides, discusses the goals and objectives, which focus on lowering costs and expanding clean energy options. And then there's some discussion of the legal requirements under the state RSA. And there are a number of educational appendices. They talk about legislative energy policy in the state, in a number of different avenues, the manner in which Eversource procures electricity, things like net metering. They summarize the process that this committee has gone through in developing the plan, and some other sort of regulatory requirements, such as how customer data will be protected and held confidential. So again, this program probably won't launch until sometime in 2024, spring 2024 at the earliest. And if and when Newmarket gets to that point in time, the process would be, there's a customer notification enrollment process. And actually, so 10 cities and towns just this week, they dropped their mailers, which are sort of the 30 days to customer enrollment and the beginning of the actual programs. So Rye, Exeter, Nashua, Lebanon, Hanover, a number of other towns across the state. So that's very exciting. These are the first programs to go live in the state, and we'll see the rates on the next slide. But in Newmarket, what would occur is every customer in town would receive a mailed notification. It says, "Welcome to Newmarket Community Power. Here's our rate. Here's how it compares to the Eversource rate. If you want to choose a greener product, or if you want to opt out, go to this website, call this customer service number, email this address, and that customer service will process your request. Within 30 days, any customer can choose not to participate. After the 30-day mark, customers who receive Eversource power supply will be switched into the Newmarket power supply program if they take no action. And after that 30-day period, at any point in time in the future, customers may choose to leave the program at no cost at their next monthly utility meter read. So utilities read the meter once a month, and you can switch out any month you like. Certain customers already shop in the market for energy supply. They'll get the letter. The letter will say, you are unaffected by this, you don't need to do anything, and you stay with your supplier. Something to that effect. So here's the rate summaries. So I hope we can see this, but on the left, we see the utility rates, 20.2 cents for Eversource, and then a little bit higher for Liberty and Unitil. In the middle of that left column, we see Coalition Granite Basic, and that's a 15.8 cent rate. So that's what those 10 towns are currently enrolling customers into. So they will have a 22% discount for their mass market residential customers for May, June, and July. And then if we look at the right, these are all of the rate offerings for those towns. And this is just an example where actually the higher renewable energy product is the default. So the blue in the middle, Granite Plus there, 16.2 cents. For example, the town of Hanover chose to have a default for customers that was more renewable energy. And that's still considerably cheaper than the Eversource rate. Newmarket could choose, we want the cheapest power we can get. That's Granite Basic, that's 15.8 cents at the current rate. Or you could choose the higher renewable. So that's an option for the town. Down at the bottom, we have an example of Exeter Community Power on the bottom left. And this is just illustrating, so those first 3 months, May, June, July, that 22% discount for the Exeter ratepayers is generating $1.2 million in bill savings for those customers. And that's approximately 7,770, it's exactly 7,770 customers who would be the default if nobody chose to opt out. And in addition to the customer bill discounts, there's considerable additional value that is created here. So this coalition, which we're about to talk about, this nonprofit, it's a new energy supplier. And rather than buying power from a private supplier and, they charge you, say, 16 cents, and maybe their cost of power is 10 cents, and they have a nice 5-cent margin there, and that's their net revenue, that's their profit, that's their that's their profit margin, right? Under this nonprofit coalition model, the revenue and the profit is controlled by the communities through Community Power Coalition. So just for Exeter alone, the community of Exeter is generating the equivalent of $957,000 in reserve funds that are held by the coalition on behalf of Exeter. And there's a number of benefits to that. We're going to get into this a little further, but by allowing community control of the revenue from these programs, we can build up a reserve fund, we can protect against future rate spikes. As prices change in the market, we can rely on that reserve fund to keep rates stable and low. And it's a mechanism to develop local projects, to finance local projects, if that is of interest to communities. Are there any questions about any of this? A lot of numbers up there.
Is that reserve fund you mentioned that's stored by you, that's not given back to the town?
It is held, there are two categories of reserve. There is joint reserves, and the coalition holds the collective reserves of all the members jointly on their behalf. It tracks how much is sort of generated by each town, but it is used for the collective portfolio to make sure everybody in the coalition's rates stay low over time. If Newmarket Community Power were to exit the coalition, there's sort of termination language in the contract, and after a 3-year period, you terminate, you leave the program, you bring your piece of the reserve fund with you, and that is sort of outlaid to the town of Newmarket, and they own it, if you were to leave. We don't expect communities to leave because of the benefits of participating, but that is outlined in the contract. The other piece of this, so there's joint reserves. There are also discretionary reserves, and a town, through the coalition, can apply a discretionary reserve adder. Let's say we're charging 15.8 cents a kilowatt hour. Maybe Newmarket wants to charge 15.9 cents a kilowatt hour, and that 0.1 cent a kilowatt hour would flow to a discretionary reserve fund solely controlled and used by the town of Newmarket. So you can have individual unilateral control reserves.
And there's some governance around how the town of Newmarket would use, like they use those funds specifically for energy-related projects, infrastructure, or full discretion?
That is, this is detailed in our financial reserve policy, which is on the website, but there is, the discretionary reserve is, there's broad discretion in how the town would use that.
I like pointing that out because I think that the town could see a lot of value in that. So, because energy, there's different political bents to it, and sometimes people come to it from a sustainability angle, and sometimes the economy is the motivating factor, and I just think the town would really benefit from having that flexibility and having those funds, so that's why I asked.
Hi, I'm Dale Pike on 30 Smith Garrison, and I was curious, I had read about it in the paper, the plan and what you were working on, and I was wondering how it would work. And just for background, I've been, since it became an option to buy contract power separately through another provider, I've been doing that. And I was pretty much just lucky in September of 2021 because I was up for renewing my contract, and I did, and it was surprising to me for basically the same price. I got a 3-year contract instead of a 1-year, which is, wasn't really looking for anything that long, but since it was the same price and there was no fee for cancellation, I took it. And it looks pretty good because that's just a little under 9 cents a kilowatt out of the power supply on that. So you already answered my main question. I wouldn't be forced off this contract early. I get that. But how does this work? You know, what is the time period? That's what I was wondering. Is this the price can change every 6 months, every 12 months? That was one question, because one of the things that, you know, it sounds like you could do then is, if you're not getting your power through Eversource, you're getting it through somewhere else. Normally in September of 2024, I'd be shopping for a new contract. So it sounds like, but I want to make sure I understand this correctly, in September of 2024, I could choose to go with the consumer power, or I could choose to go to the market again and see what prices are available and how long the guarantee will take place. Because these I'm guessing these aren't going to be guaranteed for 3 years.
So it's a good question, and it's a good point. And one of the main points is, yes, a customer, this is just one more choice for the customer. Customer can switch around however they choose. These rates are effective through July 31st of this year. The reason for that is that utility rates reset on August 1 and on February 1, every 6 months. And the coalition is designed to allow the communities to collectively adjust the rate to maintain the discount to the utility. The town of Newmarket does have another option. The town of Newmarket could approve this plan by the town council, and instead of going with the coalition, you could hire a broker, and that broker would do something like what you do, and they would lock in the town to a fixed rate for 3 years. And that isn't another option. The benefit of that is, well, you know for a fact what your price is for 3 years. The trade-off is, well, maybe the utility rate dips below that price at some point and raises above it and dips below it, so you can't guarantee savings. So one of the benefits of this is the rates will adjust every 6 months to maintain the discount to the utility.
Does that totally answer your question?
Yeah, I
Good,
think so,
okay.
but there will be some people that will just look and see what this is as an option, and look and see if there's a better deal.
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely. So, you know, folks who do choose to shop around, like yourself, that's great. Those are informed consumers. They're happy to read the fine print and do that, and they can get good deals. This is for sort of the mass market that maybe isn't quite as literate in those options. You know. And, you know, one of the terms here is, right now there's a default supplier, and that's Eversource. And they're not making money on that. They just buy it for 20 cents and sell it for 20 cents, and they focus on poles and wires, and that's where they make their money. But the default, if for customers who don't choose an option, is Eversource. This is the new default, where Newmarket Community Power will be a new, more affordable default and an additional choice in addition to Eversource and the other market options. So the coalition. This is a community-governed, not-for-profit joint powers agency. It was created on October 1st of 2021, a year and a half ago, and it has grown from an original 14 founding members, including the town of Newmarket, to 30 members statewide that represent 20% of the state population and over 100,000 customers and considerable volume of electricity and dollars in revenue that is associated with that sale of electricity supply. Again, that's revenue that is controlled by the coalition. Its books are public, and the communities sort of collectively come together through this coalition to hire technical experts and then purchase electricity for their communities. So there's the 10 that mailed all their letters the past 4 days, and they're all going to enroll customers the last week of April and then over the course of May. And then there's Portsmouth and Canterbury and maybe the city of Dover, who have the option of going live in the June timeframe, and they may also come on board in the June timeframe. And then there's, of course, Newmarket and the other 18-plus cities and towns. There were just, I think there were 8 that went to town meeting over the past 2 weeks Hudson, Warner, Westmoreland, Webster, New London, and others that went to town meeting to approve their plans. Obviously, we don't have town meeting here, but that's how many communities are legally required to go to town meeting. So anyway, Newmarket's in this growing collection of towns that are in a good position to sort of get approved this year and then maybe go into the market in the spring of 2024. Springtime is generally a favorable market time with the demand for natural gas falling as we come out of the winter. There's less need for natural gas for heating and electricity, and prices tend to fall, and it tends to be a good time to launch. We talked about the reserves, but again, like if the pie chart on the left is showing the full bill, the gray part is the Eversource portion, illustratively. The blue part is the community power supply. And if we take that blue part and we look at the bar chart, you know, the vast majority of that goes to the blue, which is the cost of energy or electricity. Then there is, you know, the charge for the coalition's overhead, you know, your service providers, the staff, the financing costs, and that's built into the rate, whether you buy from a supplier or whether you buy from the coalition, you're paying somebody's overhead. That green bar at the top, that is representing the accrual of the reserve fund. So, and this is all illustrative. These numbers are just a teaching tool. They're not real numbers, but the concepts are very real. So that green portion is what the money that we're banking as a nonprofit on behalf of these communities in the reserve to make sure we can keep rates low over time. That green bar, if you're buying from a broker or a supplier, that's their profit margin. And it could be 8, 10, 12, 15%, whatever it is, that's just the profit for that supplier. Okay, questions on this? I'll keep going. So timeline. Of the past couple of years, the town has formed a committee, has joined the coalition and actually formed the coalition. They've done considerable research. They've drafted the plan. They've held a town council work session, so town council is briefed. They've held they've had one of 2 public hearings. There will be another public hearing, and then the plan will come before town council for a vote of adoption. There's other steps where it has to go to the state Public Utility Commission for a 60-day approval, and notifying the utilities and other sort of administrative steps. But that will authorize the town to then enter into contracts either with the coalition as a service provider or a broker or supplier as a service provider to launch the program within the next 12 months. And that's the end of the hearing deck, and happy to answer other questions or hear comments from anybody.
First of all, thanks for that very clear, appealing proposal to some nothing to lose proposition. Just have one question, and that is, I have solar panels with no batteries, so the spring and summer and fall, nice weather, often generate more electricity than I use. That goes back into the grid, and Eversource puts those kilowatt hours in a bank for me, which I can spend in the winter.
Bill, everyone would benefit from your question. Do you mind using the mic? I think Channel 13's having trouble picking you up. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's such a good question, and I know others will appreciate it.
Yeah, so that question is, will I still be able to get that same system, assuming I choose to buy into community power, since Eversource is doing the billing and all that? I'm guessing that I will still get those same credits going into the bank.
Yep, that's a great question. I'll try to repeat it a little bit for the mic and for if there's folks online. But the question is, a gentleman is a net metering customer. You have solar panels. You generate your own power. You feed some of that power back onto the grid, and Eversource banks it as a credit for you against future electricity usage.
Exactly.
And will you be able to do that with community power? And the answer is,
Yes.
right now, you will not. And let me just explain this a little bit. So, Community Power Coalition, all of the member communities are very committed to providing service to net metering customers. That is their desire. That's part of the purpose, is to have more expanded options for folks such as yourself who generate your own power. They're, the utility companies have not yet implemented the billing processes or been able to share the relevant data, the export data, how much power is exported to the grid by net metering customers with the coalition and our service providers to allow us to appropriately serve net metering customers as of yet.
Yep.
We are working closely with the Public Utility Commission and the utility companies to ensure that the right processes are followed, and under the law and the rule, this is all allowed for, but there are certain updates that utilities need to implement to allow it to occur. So there are certain customer groups that are not automatically enrolled. Those are the folks on competitive supply. For the time being, those are net metering customers as well. But they don't need to take any action. They won't be negatively affected in any way. And as soon as we're able to resolve that issue with the utility companies, we will provide the same service or better service
Good.
for your
Yep,
customers.
I get it. I hope you get that done.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
I got a couple small ones for you. I'm Ben, I live near the high school, Maple Crest Street. The choice of power in terms of percentage of renewable energy, is that determined by the town? How does that work? I might have missed that point.
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, the coalition offers two options for a default for the mass market that folks are automatically switched into, and that's Granite Basic, which is minimum allowed renewable content, which is 23.4%, and that's the cheapest option. And then you could also default everyone into Granite Plus, which is 33% renewable and at a little bit of a premium there. So the town chooses which one of those do we want as a default. The town also chooses which options do we want to offer on this menu. So the first 10 towns, they're offering all the options. 7 of them are Granite Basic default, 3 of them are Granite Plus default, and they all offer Clean 50 and Clean 100 as something the customer could individually choose.
Okay, so I could call up whoever and say I want to do Clean 100, regardless of what the town picks, and that would be
That's right.
allowable. Okay.
That's right.
You kept saying this kind of is anyway. You kept saying residential in your whole presentation. Said residential, and I don't own a business, so maybe it's a stupid question. Is this going to apply all to the businesses in Newmarket that receive power from EverSource? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I'll just speak to it a little bit. So yes, the determining factor is, does the customer shop for power with a supplier like this gentleman, or does the customer take EverSource default? And all those customers will be enrolled. There are different rates for certain commercial customer classes that are savings, but certain commercial customer classes, these rates are not for those customers. There's a separate set of rates for those customers.
Okay. Got it.
That may change on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you. And I'm trying to make sure I understand the reserve fund and everything. Something that I am interested in talking about at a future date with the council is more solar panels for the town. Is that something that we could, as a community, use the reserve fund for? Is that one of those kind of discretionary pieces that we could take?
Yeah, that's a great question. And some of the other more mature markets, they very much do directly contract to build new community solar projects that then power not just the town facilities, but the entire town,
Okay.
and do so cost effectively. And just an important point here, it's not necessarily that we will spend the cash of the reserve on the solar panels. It is more so that because we have a healthy reserve fund and a good long-term business model, private financier and a private developer will spend their capital on building a solar array, and we will sign a contract, like a 10-year contract with them to buy the power from them, from the array that they own and finance. But so the reserve fund allows us to do this, but we're not necessarily just spending the cash on it. It just lets us do a 10-year contract for power from a new array.
Okay, got it.
I'll just add, Ben, that I like hearing you ask the question. It's one that the EEAC talked a lot about, and that it's attractive to us to be able to have the town be able to fund projects like that.
Yeah.
We thought if we talked about the dam and solar and just different ways of creating sustainable power. So.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Thank you for the
Yep.
presentation.
Okay.
And Well, I thank you all for attending. Thank you, Henry. This was excellent. Good. You guys have any questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for
your
coming out.
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good questions.
I apologize for the brain farting test.
Oh, don't worry about
I
it.
don't know.
And folks actually, they struggle with Herndon a little bit. It's kind of funny that R&D is a weird.
I think when I read your emails, I think I see Henry H, and that's as far
Yes.
as I go.
Yeah, that's fair. HH, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
of course.
we have to put the plan out on the town website?
Thanks for coming out.
You should. You should do that, yeah. It's a public document.
Trying to get power out